life is an arcade. I wanna play every single game. These bright lights are making my heart race.
Yo, welcome back, everybody. Authentic Vibes Only. Episode should be 6, and for season 2, as you know, clothing is coming too for season 2. The first drop is this Friday. For Labor Day weekend, we're going to do a special drop. We're back here again with a special guest. Pretty much every episode this season has had a guest except for one. So I'm glad to introduce another guest, Coach Red Wallace here. And if you don't follow him because his content's amazing. He's going to have a lot of good things for you guys to say, are here today and you guys to learn from. I've learned a lot from him as well. Like we were just speaking before we started about kind of how we got connected. So it's pretty cool how we both had mutuals. So I had Hey Donnie on last season. And Dr. Duck on this season, and we got mutuals through each other, and he reached out through Instagram, and then we just set this up. So it's really cool. Like I said before, guys, how just easy networking works. I mean, you just reach out or you see a page. I mean, don't be afraid to reach out to these people, because even if, you don't get them on an episode, if you have your podcast or they don't work with you, maybe in the future, they might point you in the direction for someone else. You never know how this kind of stuff works.
That's right.
And let's say one thank you, and then we'll get in with Coach Red here. Let's say a thank you to all the sponsors. We have JW's Third Base, Candlelight Inn, One Take Photography, and then, as always, brought to you as the brand Authentic Vibes Only. We are the sub part of the brand for the podcast. But here we go. Coach Red. Exactly. I've been interested mostly in how you define yourself. Like you define yourself as a coach, but more of a creative entrepreneur coach. So let's hear a little bit about exactly what that means and what you're doing with that title.
For sure. Well, first off, thank you for asking me to be as a guest. It's always great to be in the other seat. Being a podcast host myself, it's not every day that I get to be on the other side answering the questions. It's always, it's always a little bit different. Man, give me 1 second.
No, you're good, man.
Man, I would say defining myself, it's so funny to think. I love asking my guests that question. And when I'm asked that question, I think first, faith plays a big part of my life. So I would say first, I'm a child of God. And then second, I would say I'm a husband. I'm a father of 2. And that's probably why my voice sounds awful right now, as my little ones has been sick the last couple of weeks. Well, last week, actually, to be exact. But so if my voice is a little raspy, you understand why.
It's all good.
But it's definitely a huge aspect of my life. I mean, I'm wearing my dad gang hat, as you can tell. I take fatherhood seriously. But as far as defining myself as a coach, I use that term, I guess you could say, for branding purposes. Like, obviously, I love the role as coach, and I wear it with honor. And I know that the space itself it can be muddied. It can be muddy with a lot of nonsense, but we can get to that later. But I will say that, man, it's interesting to be on the other side of podcasting because that's honestly where I started. I would say that I had this drive to motivate people since I was young. And I branched out into podcasting in 2018. I made my first podcast. And at the time, I was just sharing motivational tips, 5 to 10 minute tips and I posted them every Monday. And I started there, and then it blossomed into now doing something similar to what you're doing. From what I see, is having creative people and entrepreneurs on your show and having them just come out and share their story. Cause I feel like there's power in our stories, and it's one thing to tell somebody a tip. It's one thing to give advice. It's another thing to share a story and share the lesson that was learned from that story. And I feel like there's power in that. But man, we could go whichever route you want to go. I can't see your video right now, so I'm not sure if Everything's
I'm still
going
here.
good. Okay, cool.
Yeah, sorry. I've had that happen with one of my guests. It still records both our videos, I guess, on the back end. So we're sorry you can't see me. Hopefully it'll come back up, but I am still here.
No worries. I just wanted to make sure we're good because I didn't want to. For a minute there, I was like, "Am I talking to
yourself?" Yeah.
Am I making a solo podcast?
No, I am here for sure. But I do love like where you a little bit with that about sharing a story. Like it's a lot more. Like you said, it's more powerful to share a story. I think that's been the most important aspect of the podcast and the brand for me is like it. I can sit up here and say shit all day, but like am I living that? You know, where did I come from and what did I go through for the reason why am I saying what I'm saying? Why am I trying to give out motivation and teach other people all these things? And it's because of the story and everything I've went through. So like you said, everyone can spew whatever, but the story is really what makes people relate to you as a person and want to be a fan of you. And like I watched a video of one of your videos I saw, and you said everyone has a story, no matter what it is. Yeah. Everybody's gone through something tough, and that level of toughness doesn't make you more or less of a person. Someone's toughest situation to you may not be as tough, but that's still their toughest situation, or the hardest thing they've ever went through. So,
For sure.
When it comes to,
and I can. Oh, what's that?
No, go ahead, man.
There you are. You're back.
Oh, we're back.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I can see you now, so that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, and I can share, I guess, give you, because that's the thing is I could go whichever level of my origin story you would want to go to. We could talk about where I got started in creativity in general. We could go so many different places. Another bit of my story that I don't get to share as much is that I had a 10-year rap career, actually.
Oh, okay.
And so it's funny because I've been recently sharing the story a little bit. I like to say it as hip hop raised me, kind of. Like I have great parents. My parents are awesome. Shout out to mom and dad for sure. But with that said, you know, as I mentioned before in stories, you know, we all deal with our own level of trauma and things that seem tough for us because, you know, we're all in different places in life. And for me, I can remember growing up and I was in art class. It was so funny. I was in art class when I was like in 7th grade, and a super cool teacher. She let us listen to the radio. Yeah, you young people out there may not even know what a radio is, but we had a radio, and I at the time I listened to a lot of alternative rock, some pop punk, that kind of stuff. And then one of the guys in the class, he put on some hip hop, and I'm in Texas. So it was like Dirty South. It was Bun B, Pimp C, you know, Slim Thug, Paul Wall, those people. It was really like in their prime. Like that was before I got into my actual rap career. It was a little before. But yeah, and I started listening to hip hop, and at first I was like, no, this ain't it for me, man. I need my like heavier music because that's where the space emotionally, that's where I was.
Right.
As a kid, you know, you're always pretty emotional when you get to figuring out where you are in life. But then it just started growing on me. And then I found myself just falling in love with the whole culture of hip hop. There was a space in time when I was breakdancing, b-boying. I was in a breakdance crew for a while. And then I got to the point where we moved from my original hometown, like a couple hours away, because my dad got a new job and it was a little bit safer because the street that I lived on growing up when I was in middle school was pretty tough. Like there was drive-bys, there was rival gangs that lived there. I usually don't even share that much of the story, but my family just wanted to get a better take at things. So my dad got the opportunity to have a job, and about a couple hours away, it was about the same size town, but much more country, much more spread out. Yeah. So it was definitely a little bit of culture shock for me. But in that, my mom was super protective of me. So she was like, okay, you're not going to go out on these streets because I know how the streets were where we moved from. So I'm going to protect my little boy kind of thing. And I was like, what do you mean, Mom? I'm trying to make friends. We just moved here. I don't know anyone. How am I supposed to live this life? And at the time I was a sophomore in high school. So like it was a few years went by from there to there. And I found myself sitting at home on like Thursday, Friday nights when instead of going out to a party, I was stuck at home. And up to this point, I had really used hip hop and music in general as an escape. Like I remember going on long trips with my family and just putting in my headphones and just melting away to listening to Eminem's lyrics. Cause I mean, come on, dude's top tier when it comes to that. I was a huge fan of Lil Wayne at the time, Drake, all those guys. And it's just that music that really defined me in that era, but also it was just a way to escape. And from there, I would fast forward to that. Now it's like 2008 and I'm at home bored and I had my sister's hand-me-down laptop. That's what I was just like on the, I think MySpace was what we were on at the time.
MySpace.
Shout out to MySpace.
MySpace is dope. Yeah, no, shout out.
And I was
music
like,
on the profile.
Oh yeah. Music on the profile. Then you could have your own music profile and put your own music out there. But
that's awesome.
That was where we got to eventually. But yeah, then I found myself like, if I'm going to sit here, I might as well be productive. So I was like, I could try to make a rap. So I found, I had a rock band mic from my Xbox because that was like USB. So I was like, let me plug this into this beat up laptop. I was using this free DAW, digital audio workstation. And I found myself writing my first rap, recording my first rap, and it was hot garbage. But something about the process of making music just spoke to me. And it was in that moment that I found identity. I was like, okay, cool. This could be someone I could become. And I was in this new town. So I was like, I could really create my whole new persona kind of thing. And it's funny because as I thought about that more now, hindsight, I think about the times in life when I always wanted to be friends with everybody. And when I was growing up, it was very, very clique. It was like you had the goths, you had the emos, you had the jocks, you had the hip hop people, and you had the country people. And I never understood why we almost segregated ourselves to a degree of what we did. And I found myself saying, why can't we just all get along? But while in the hopes to get along with all these people, I almost became like this chameleon that would shapeshift into who I needed to be in the right set, the right cliques that I was in. And that became kind of who I was. And it got to a point when I really dove into the hip hop. I started rapping a ton. And then I'd say if we fast forward to 2011, so I graduate, I've been dating a girl for a while. We break up. The usual, you break up with your high school sweetheart and it's like the end of the world. So I was like crushed. I was like, this is the end of life. And a friend of mine actually invited me to a church, like a youth church service. And I was like, man, I kind of grew up in church. Cool, whatever. I'll go. Why not? I'm bored. And of course my mom was like, yeah, church is fine. It's safe. You can go there. Right. And I went to church and I had never experienced God like that before. And that was kind of the start of this new journey for me. And yeah, so it was like 2011 around when that happened. And then not far from that first time going to that church event, this church actually put on a block party. And I was like, churches put on block parties? What are you talking about? Right. And there was this Christian rapper there. And I never experienced faith in God and this idea of all that way. And all I knew is like my life changed in that moment. And I was like, I want to rap about this. I want to like fully develop, like fully immerse myself in this world. So I did. And then I rapped for a while there. I got some crazy, great opportunities to do some shows, open up for a few kind of somewhat famous in the Christian world artists. And then it got to a point where now we're going to fast forward to like 2018. Okay. And it's 2018. So this is like, I had just put out, I don't know, at this point I'd made 200, 300 songs. Like I was putting in work. I was grinding and seeing a somewhat level of success in it. And I connected with a few people, and that last song that I put out in 2018 was probably my best performing as far as what people enjoyed. It was getting the most streams. I really kind of honed in on my sound. And then I felt like something was up. And I felt like, and again, like if I'm sharing too much of my faith, I understand.
No, you're good. You're good.
I understand. I don't know. I never know how far I can go, and I don't want to ever.
No, you can go.
Perfect.
Say whatever.
Perfect. Yeah, because that's one thing. I'm never gonna like throw
force it on people
and force it on people. I just like to
be
share.
you, man. It's authentic vibes. I want the full version of you. Whatever you got to say, just you.
But yeah, so like in 2018, and at the time I was actually in 2016 I started working at this. I'd say she's like kind of like a life coach, but like Bible-based life coach. She was on YouTube. I was doing all her video editing, and I've been doing that since 2016. And about 2018, I felt like the Lord, and while doing that, and this is another thing that I like to stress too, is like while doing that from like 2016 to 2018, I was full-time job editing a bunch of videos that were on YouTube, on TV. It was wild. And I was really involved in my church. And I was trying to make this rap career go off the ground. Like I had my hand in like so many different pots. Like I was wearing like 20,000 different hats, doing all these things. And I got to this point in 2018 where I was just burnt out. I didn't understand, because I was doing things I loved and I was happy about what I was doing, and I was somewhat successful with it. And then I felt like God was saying, do you trust me enough to sit down what you identify yourself as? And for me, that was rap, because like that was what I was trying to put all my cards in while doing everything else. And I was like, you know what? I think I am. I'm terrified to put down this thing that it became my identity, but I did. And then it was from like 2018 to I'd say probably early 2021. It was that space of my life where I went on this like personal growth, personal identity crisis, even this real like journey. And it was in that space that I learned, I was burnt out. And I needed to realign myself in a way that was going to be sustainable. Because before that, I was just running hard, doing everything I can, not sleeping, not taking care of my body, not doing any of the things that we need to, like basic survival need. Right. And then and I was like, okay, great. So then we got to the point of like 2020. And at that point, I found my wife. We got pregnant with our firstborn, our son. And right before, during the pandemic, I was like, okay, I think I also need to quit my job and focus on being a stay-at-home parent. Because thankfully my wife was in a space in her career where that was logical. We could do that. And again, that was a huge leap of faith in itself, because I'm like, I found again another layer of identity in the fact that I was editing videos for a successful YouTube channel. And it was like, okay, no, I'm going to pull back that layer as well. And it was like, if you could do nothing else, like if tomorrow you were stripped of all the gifts, all the talents, all the things that you were pursuing, and all that was left was you, who are you? And it was when I got to that space, I was like, I don't know. I don't know who I am. And it was in that space that I really, really found myself. I found what my core values are, what I believe, what I'm supposed to be here for. And it was in that time I knew that I'm supposed to impact people. I'm supposed to serve people, help people in whatever level that is. But most of all, it's just that idea of a lot of times we think that our identity is what we're doing. And it's so much bigger than that. It's in who we are behind what we do. Because I feel like, and it goes back to being creative and being creators. It's very easy for us to find that identity in our work and in our art. But it's amazing when we realize that our art is a reflection of our life.
I said, there was something crazy. There's a lot I want to speak on because you have like a crazy similar story to like how like my backstory started. But with art, I said that last week that like in the episode, it was like I talked about creation and art for me is like a way to free my mind, but also like I haven't been doing it enough. And then like I also spoke on how for whatever reason, I make a lot of like really good designs when I'm sad. I feel like that's how like music and stuff is too. But I just spoke on how like I create and I make art based on how I'm feeling. So like if I'm happy, it's gonna, like you said, it shows like where I'm at and what I'm feeling. So like if there's a sad quote, maybe I just got some sad feelings that day. That quote popped in my head and I made something based off that quote. So that's cool how you're talking about that, because I spoke a little bit, not as extent like that, but that is definitely, creation is definitely a reflection of who you are and where you're at and how you're feeling in life. I can agree with that.
For sure, man. For sure.
And then you also spoke about just so much. It's just crazy. I don't know. I feel like it's really crazy because your story's similar to mine. I just people and myself, and like you said, you too. When I went on this journey, like you did too, I was always identifying, like you said, as the things I'm doing. So not who I am or what I like and stuff like that. Not like who I am and what I stand for and my passions or what I care about. It wasn't always that, like you said. For me, high school and college, I was an athlete, I was a football player, and that's all I was. And like you said, I didn't fall out of that until I was done with football. Football ended, and I also ended up like a 7-year relationship at the same time I was done with football in college. And the relationship was already, not good. There's a lot of terrible stuff going on. And so I was same thing. I was having an identity crisis. And then like I came back home and transferred colleges, and that's like, I was there for first semester and then COVID hit. So this was like my senior year. So like I just transferred to a new school. I'm there in person, and then COVID hit. We don't even go back. I'm online for the next year and a half or whatever. But while that happened, I was the same way. I was working at my parents' restaurant still on weekends, going to online class during person or during the week. And I was doing nothing else. Like I wasn't, I was like, okay, what else do I do? So then I found the same thing. I was like, who am I? Like, what do I really like to do? Who am I? Who do I stand for? Like who am I as a person? I never really knew. And that's been, 3 years now, and it's still like, it just doesn't end. I find more layers. Like you said, you peel back those layers, you give things up, and you find a new thing you like, and then you start to identify as that again. But it's like, that's still not who I am. That's just something I enjoy, something I'm good at. But yeah, what are really my like, what do I stand for as a person? Who am I? Am I driven? I'm a hard worker. I'm caring. I'm loving. I'm passionate, stuff like that. You peel back all those traumas and everything you've been through and find out who that really is.
Yeah.
So speaking on that, how have you become, well, you've already explained that kind of like your story, but how do you define like authenticity? Like what would your definition of be? And for you, what are some authentic traits about yourself?
That's a great question. How do I define authenticity? I would say that authenticity is being the person you are. For our example, on and off mic, being the person you are when no one's watching. It's that level of character and integrity, because it's really easy to talk a big game when the lights are on and everything's behind the curtain, right? And it's this idea of truly being who you are to every person. Now I understand like there's times when you can't I guess, fully show up because you don't want to, man, how do I say that? No, I'll say it that way. I do think that you should always show up your authentic self. And I think that that's the struggle of in this space of social media. Now, thankfully, I feel like with lockdowns and with the pandemic, we were able to kind of shift back into a way of honesty. And with the rise of TikTok as well, is this idea of I grew up in the Instagram generation where it was like filters, where it was like highlight reels, where you got the best of everybody. And I think that now this generation that came after me has been very raw, open. Like there's TikToks where people are just saying things, they're not worried about it looking or sounding perfect. And I think there's a beauty to that. And I think that if we can embrace that in a way that's real and honest, then that's like the humanity factor. And everyone talks about AI right now and how like robots are taking over the world. And I would argue against that with the fact that AI can never amount to the human connection. Like what we're doing right now, I feel like a robot will never be able to achieve, because we're having that moment of we've had similar experiences. Great example, as you mentioned, you played football. I played football and baseball in high school.
Same, yeah.
And it was another layer of that identity. And it's amazing that we can, like you said, get so wrapped up in that identity. But yeah, so you said that was the first part of the question. How do I define authentic?
Yeah. And then I'll just say, like, how would you say that you're authentic? Like, who are you as an authentic, who is the authentic Coach Red Wallace?
I love it. I would say it's the man that's not afraid to say, I don't have it all figured out, and nor will I ever pretend to be. And it's funny because I feel like a lot of times, and this goes back to this piece of coaches, there's a lot of people out there that want to claim to be experts, that want to claim to be gurus. And I get it. I understand. Like when you get a certain level of accolades and you've done a certain level of things, I understand that you want to express that. But at the degree of, I truly believe that we're always learning. Like you mentioned, there's always layers to our identity that we're discovering. And I feel like the best way we can show up authentically, and I try to myself, is humbly say that I don't have all the answers. And I'm going to do my best with the answers that I have and the things that I have and the lessons that I have. But there will be plenty of times that I still mess up. Great example is before we started, and I can kind of hear my son crying in the background. Thankfully, my wife is a superhero and she's taking care of both the kids. But before I started, my son was upset because I was about to go in the other room and record this podcast. And I could pretend like none of that is going on, or I could just be like, look, this is real life. Like sometimes I get a little stressed and I might yell at my son and then have to apologize because I'm still working through things. And it's that whole piece of there's always a layer to uncover, and there's always something to get out of our story. Cause it's like this, and I'll circle to another story that I like to share that I feel like works with this, but it's this idea of the sculpture of David. You may or may not know that Michelangelo was amazing artist. He did sculptures and stuff. And when he made the sculpture of David, and this is like kind of urban legend myth of this actual story, but I think it's beautiful because it's a great metaphor for our lives in general, is when he got done with sculpting David, this person asked him, how did you create this like beautiful, amazing piece of art from this giant block of marble? And he said, it's simple. I just chiseled away the parts that weren't David. And I feel like that's our mission in life, is to chisel away the parts of us that aren't us, because society or circumstances or traumas begin to put on these stories that we end up wearing like clothes or even like masks. And it's hard for us to come to grips with the reality of sometimes we've been told a story that's a complete lie. Like, for instance, if there was maybe someone bullied you in school and you believe this lie of, oh, I'll never be strong enough to be a great man. So you carried that little seed that was planted in your life, that little story, and you wore that story your whole life. And if we're not careful, we'll begin to take on those little stories as identities. And I like to look at it as, if we can just chisel away the parts of ourselves that aren't really us, and get down to the inner man, the person that's deep inside that we were created and destined to be, then that's when we'll be truly thriving. That's when we'll be creating out of abundance.
I can agree so much, because it's like, that's literally just what the brand is. I love how you said, like, my authentic self is being able to admit that, like, I don't have the answers, and I'm not always perfect. And because there's no better explanation for the brand. I mean, it's based off the spiral, which is based off the ancient spiral, which is based off the never ending journey of life.
Yeah. I love it.
And that's just like, where this brand starts. And I've said it to many people and in many episodes, like, it sounds crazy because I'm on here for the people, because I felt the same way. Like, I didn't know how I was going to do it, and I never knew it was going to be a podcast or a clothing brand or whatever, but I always felt that, like, my goal was to help people and make people better and change people's perspectives on everything. And I've said on here, even though I'm here doing that to you guys, like last week, so I was really like raw on it. That's probably I feel like I do my best to be authentic and stuff and show my true sides. But like, I was crying on last week's episode and shit. It was crazy, and I just, like, to me, this, like, I'll sit here and tell you exactly what's going on in my life, how I feel and why I'm not showing up. And I apologize. And I say, like, how I can do this. And these are ways I can do to be better. And these are ways that are going to help you if you feel in the same way, stuff like that. And, I feel like I'm like your coach, but like, these guys are my coach. Like, me being able to talk to the people is like therapy to me. And then it makes me honestly realize more and more, like, every episode I'm on here, I realize more and more, like, I find more of my authentic self because I am being so open and genuine with these people about, like, my life. Like, I start to, like, it just helps me even more become the person that I want to be and become more authentic. So it's kind of crazy. It's like, I really use this because I feel like I'm helping others, but by being able to do this, it's helping me. It's like a full circle thing.
For sure, man. Man, it makes me want to hear, like, the coach and the podcast host in me wants to hear more about your story.
We can speak. I mean, hey, whatever you want to ask her, go ahead.
All right. I want to ask you this question. I want to say, and if it cuts too deep, then by all means you can cut it out and we can move on. But I'm just curious to ask it is, what part of you are you not ready to understand better?
What part am I not ready to understand better? I don't think I have a full, like, answer for that. It's more along the lines fair. Like, I think there's still so much of me that I don't understand. There's not like something that I hone in on. It's like, I feel, because I'm glad you asked this question, because it was something I want to add on what I was saying. Mm-hmm. Someone asked me, Dr. Duck and I talked about it. He said, do you actually think you can ever be 100% authentic? So this is where I'm going to go with this. I don't think you can ever be 100% authentic. And what I mean by that is because it is the never ending journey, but you are being 100% authentic by working on trying to be 100% authentic, by taking the trials and tribulations, by going through the bullshit and handling it in a better way than you would have before, even if it still didn't work out right, but you handled it better, or you handled this situation differently than you would have before, even if it's still a bad situation, or you take the good situations and you take them to the next level type shit. just by trying to be a better you and figure out who you are, you're being 100% authentic. So I think with me, like, I don't know what I want to understand better about myself exactly, but I am every day trying to find those things out. Like, what don't I understand about myself? What still don't I get about myself? Or why do I still react this way? Or why do I do this? Why do I tick this way? Or why do I react when these things happen? So like, I think it's more just, I think for me, I guess I would just say just traumas, maybe trying to understand like why I get upset in situations or why I feel like unworthy or unloved, or basically just like angry or unloved or unwanted and unworthy. And also maybe a little bit more would be like, as secure as I may seem to people, I am very insecure in where I'm at and who I am. Like, even though I said last week I'm like a high value individual, which I don't mean like in like a, you know, like I didn't want to get like canceled for like some Andrew Tate shit. I don't mean it like that. I mean, it's just like, okay, I know who I am, not fully, but I know what I bring to the table. I know I'm caring. I know I'm loving. I know I can take care of people that I care about. You know, I have a nice job. I make good money. So like, I know who I am as a high value person. That's what I meant. But I also am very insecure. So like, okay, I had the brand and like people tell me like, dude, you're doing so amazing. And then I'm behind the scenes, like, I don't give myself enough credit. Like, oh, it's fucking amazing. I had the brand and I had the podcast, but I only got 100 views on the last episode. Oh, I only sold 10 shirts on the last drop. So then it make, you know, like I feel insecure in types of way in that, not just in the brand, but in life too. So I guess maybe I guess that would be my answer. Just like unraveling my insecurities some more, and figuring out. Now I struggled last year too with like I've always had depression and anxiety, but I was diagnosed with anxiety last year. I already was diagnosed with depression, and I was having panic attacks all the time. So now like it's been a thing to kind of unravel that part of me too. And anxiety, those are all coming from being like insecure. So where's the root causes to these things? And I have a quote kind of like that. And it's like, people need to be creative, because a society that has lost touch with creativity is an imprisoned one. And I feel like sometimes maybe that's where I'm at too. Maybe I'm not, because I also feel there's another quote here that talks about like, anxiety is creative energy, and you just kind of have to figure out how to release that. So like, anxiety is not exactly bad. They say that it could just be a stuck energy, and you got to figure out how to release it. And it could be from, you know, speaking your traumas and releasing, you know, that, or literally getting out and creating art, whatever it is, working out. It's just a stuck energy, and it doesn't have to be bad. So I guess I know that's kind of like weird tangents, but those would be how to understand the things about myself, would just be like still unraveling anxieties and insecurities on myself. Those are the things I would say. I don't know if I'm afraid of, but I would love to figure out myself more. You know, like I said, I feel like I have a lot figured out, but it's also like it's never ending. So I'm every day working on trying to figure these things out.
For sure. I think to go off that idea of that quote from creativity, I see creativity as problem solving, because even writing a song about a specific feeling or story is a way to almost answer a problem. And it's weird to think of it that way. But even like you mentioned, you're getting out those stuck energies, I think that's how you put it, and getting out those anxieties through creativity. It's a form of expression and almost like a form of therapy and coping to a degree. And I'm curious, so you mentioned anxieties and insecurities. Can you identify any specific triggers or factors that contribute to you feeling insecure or anxious?
I used to be really socially anxious, until like I knew where that stemmed from. That stemmed from not knowing who I was. So that got like way better when I was fully open with like, I don't care what society says. I'm still going to do this because I enjoy it, you know, type things. Like, you know, just like fashion statements and stuff like that I make, like slip my eyebrow. I like for a while, like people, you know, would say like they literally like people knew me my whole life. Like, you're gay now. I'm like, what's that supposed to mean? They're like, only people like, that's like a gay thing to do. I was like, all right. I was like, I like it. I don't really care what society says, you know, like stuff like that. So I was really socially anxious. But now I feel like, I think the anxiety comes from, I feel stuck, like I said, not just like business wise, but like not even, it sounds like it's comparison, but it's not really comparison, but like it is. Like, I feel like a lot of them come from being, I'm 25, but I feel like I said, I feel like I got a lot figured out, but I feel like I don't have shit. I feel like I don't feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. So I don't know where I'm comparing it to or why I'm comparing it. I get a lot of anxiety of feeling like I'm just haven't done anything with my life, or even though like I know it feels right and this is my purpose, feels like I'm just not reaching my purpose well enough. And I don't know if it's due to, like I said, not getting as many views, or not feeling like, because I don't get feedback from like anything, knowing if like people are relating to what I'm saying. And then like the clothes not converting to sales and, you know, stuff like that. That's where a lot of the anxieties come from, more of like where I'm at in life. Which I said, it doesn't make sense, because I really evaluate myself a lot, and I'm like, why are you so fucking hard on yourself? Why are you so hard on yourself? You're 25, and even honestly, in this generation, you got more than a lot of other 25-year-olds. Like, you have a house, you have a car that's, you know, paid off. You have a full-time job, and you're trying to make the thing you love into a full-time job. You're working hard. You know, I work out, you know, like I do a lot of stuff for myself. So it's like, why are you so hard on yourself?
Why are you so hard on yourself?
That's one I can't unravel. I don't know.
I
think about it, and it's like, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
I don't know, because it's like, in everything in life, like, I don't know. My parents weren't always like, you know, like, that's why I try to relate back to like my inner child and childhood traumas, but it's not like, I had like strict but lean back parents, but they weren't hard on me like that. They weren't like fucking treat me like shit if like I messed up, or like they wouldn't do that. Or if like they were like more like, you should do this because it's going to help you in this, you know? So like, then I'd be like, or you probably shouldn't do this, or it'll probably equate to this. But if you want to find out, be my guest type shit. But like when it came to like good grades, they're like, well, if you want to get into college and play college football, then you should probably try in school, you know? Like, if you don't, then that's really your choice, but we're going to tell you like the better, you know? So I don't know why I'm so hard on myself, because I don't feel like it's childhood traumas. That's why I say I try to unravel that. I don't think it is childhood trauma. So I don't know where it stems from.
That's fair. You said you played sports, right?
Yeah. I played baseball and football through high school, and then I played college football.
While playing sports, did you find yourself, you already mentioned that you really identified like with playing sports.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself like, were you the type of guy like when y'all lost or like you did poorly, it just absolutely crushed you?
Definitely. Always.
I feel like a lot of times, and dude, I love that you're sharing this. Always, one thing I like to say with my podcast and even with coaching clients is like, vulnerability is a gift. It's also a super strength. And when we can realize that, like, we don't owe anybody our vulnerability. Like, and I think authenticity could be said the same, is it's not necessarily something that we owe people, but giving that gift is what connects us on a humanity level. I digress from that. As you mentioned, and as you talk through this, and I even think back to the fact that you were the guy that was like absolutely crushed when you had an awful game or you lost, and with sports athletes, with creativity, a lot of times we become performers. And we live and we die by the acceptance and rejection of others. And we take it so personal. And I feel like that's a level of why we are so hard on ourselves in this space. Is because we expect so much because we know we're capable of it, that when we don't live up to our own expectations, then we feel like we failed. And I like to think of it this way: is say someone is an amazing painter. So you take like a Picasso or somebody, when he's set down to paint a masterpiece, in his head, that masterpiece was probably 20,000, 100,000 times better than what the final result was. But all we see is the final result that was in reality. And in our mind, we have such a huge, crazy level of expectation that when it doesn't meet that expectation, we're upset and we're crushed. And that goes for all areas of our life, not just like a piece of art. And if we can get out of and reframe that and think that even if what I put out is 50% of what's in my head, someone out there is going to think that 50% is 150%. And more than that, it's that idea of, yeah, but I'll pause there, because I think that's, man, this kind of conversations get me fired up, man. But yeah,
I can agree. Yeah, this is why I like the podcast, like the conversations. I don't know, bro. I don't know. Like, I think it's just really the people I bring on, because I'm not going to say like, oh, it's just me, but I try to be very like I said, I try to be myself as much as possible and genuine and authentic and vulnerable, because I want to bring that out and I want everyone to just see that
for sure
I'm being that way. So be comfortable and hopefully, like you said, we've never met, and you're creating somehow we're creating some sort of connection that allows us to feel safe enough to allow our authenticity out and our vulnerability out, even though we don't know each other. But what you're saying with letting ourselves down, I think that it kind of goes with like, okay, like I had this vision in my head and I still put it out, and it was only 50%, like you said, and someone else seeing it. I think maybe it's like more of a living in reality, like you said. It's more of like, you got to live in the reality. Like even though you may have expected more, like look at what you still put out. Like that's still fucking incredible. Like also, like you said, like living in reality with that could be too, like, damn, I'm only at 50% capacity. So maybe my brain is seeing 100% capacity, but I'm able to work at 50% capacity because there's other things going on in life that are causing that situation, or me to not be fully creative or whatever. And I know you talk a lot about burnout, so maybe that leads into that. Like, how do you like optimize that? Because I don't know, or is that not the same thing? Because I don't feel like I went through burnout in last winter. I was very similar to you. I went through this crazy burnout, and I'd be doing way too much in my hands in a lot of places. So I went through this crazy burnout. That's when my anxiety was kicking in. That's when I was having panic attacks. And, like I was able to break those down and like, damn, dude, you're doing too much. Like you're not eating, you're not taking care of yourself. You may be working out, but your diet's not good. Like I was eating healthy, but I was eating like, once a day. You're not taking enough in, buddy. So that you're not sleeping, you're overworking yourself. You're not taking a day off at all. So like I was able to break those things down, and then also like break down like like caffeine really like amps me up too much a lot. Yeah. So like that'll trigger, especially when I'm in like a burnout, because that's you're part of your the nervous system, you know, that
exactly.
That's how that works with that, is that's why like I'm going through a burnout and I'm just putting caffeine on it to try to get amped up. So it's causing me to have anxiety. So like, you know, I had those things together. So like, but like, am I producing at 50% because I'm burnt out in that 50%? Or am I just, you know, like, am I just, see, it's hard to word this. Is that just my good enough for the day, or am I burnt out? You know, like, because I don't know. I think there's days where you could be producing at less percentage, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a burnout or you're burned out. I don't know. It's really hard to word this.
Different seasons call for different things. And I like to, I coined the phrase, it's the rhythm of rest. Because a lot of times rest looks different in different seasons. Work looks different in different seasons. It's like you mentioned, you could be in a space and time where the most you can do is like 5% of what you used to can do. Or you can one day be doing 5% of, like, what you're doing today is 5% of what you could be doing in a few years from now. And I think we get so caught up on, it's this idea of like, there's this thing called lag indicators and lead indicators. And and if you look at it like, so like the dashboard of your car, or a car, we'll say your car. And if you're looking at your dashboard, it gives you warning signs. And it also gives you gauges of things that you can be aware of. Like if you ignore a change your oil sign long enough, your car is going to completely destroy itself. Or if you ignore a low tire warning for too long, you're going to eventually get a flat. And I feel like a lot of times we will focus on the things that don't matter and miss the things that do matter and the things that we can change. And it's that idea of if we could really just shift the focus from, because business, for example, you mentioned like selling t-shirts. Great example. So like selling t-shirts, ultimately the lag indicator is the income that comes in from the t-shirt. Mm-hmm. Now the lead indicators is making the t-shirts, making new designs, getting the word out, connecting with people that might possibly buy some in the future. And a lot of times we get too focused on the income coming in that we're not focusing on the efforts beforehand. And I think that that's a big thing when it comes to burnout, is we get focused on the things that lag to see the results, when if we would be in love with the process of it, and if we fall in love with the rhythm of what we're putting into, because for instance, like a lot of times when it comes to doing creative work, if we fall in love with making creative work and being creative, then we're not paralyzed by the perfection of it being amazing. But if we were to just only focus on it being amazing, then it's not going to be amazing, right? Like it's not even going to happen. And I feel like we get so stuck on that. And to encourage you is, when it comes to your podcast or you're selling t-shirts, is there's one way to look at it is we look at like grand scope. We look at huge accounts. We look at the Joe Rogans. We look at the top of the top. Not thinking, oh, they're reaching so many people. Why can't I reach even a quarter of that? But who's to say that out of the small number of who we're reaching with what we're making, one of those people isn't inspired to become the next great, amazing something that impacts something. And I think that when we look in that scope, it helps us frame the fact that all the efforts and the stuff that we put in matters. And it may not look like it vanity metrics, Like you may put out the clip and the clip gets 200 views or less. And you're like, I put so much effort in this. Why did it not do well? Who's to say the person that watched one of those 200 views wasn't on the edge of suicide? And this is just a crazy example, so bear with it. And say that they were on the edge of suicide and your clip that they saw at the right moment stopped them from doing that. I feel like those stories make the huge numbers pale in comparison.
Yeah, I think, like you said, man, that's where like it does get hard for me, where because I don't do this for the money. Like, I thoroughly love the fuck out of this shit. I love this. Like, I love doing this. It just is a little, like, makes it harder because the numbers aren't, you know, don't progress as fast as you'd like, or this and that. Because it's like, does it really matter? But then, like you said, looking at it in like a bigger perspective and looking at it as the delayed kind of like gratification part of it, it would be just like, did my one message affect one person today? It don't matter if it was, as long as it's one, that's what matters. If what I put out, like you said, stop this kid from suicide, that's amazing. Maybe, like you said, maybe I'm not the next best thing, even though that's unfortunate. I've been trying to do my best, and someone that's watching this is the next best thing. And, you know, they're the creator, or the creator of, you know, the cure for cancer. Well, you know, we'll just say that, you know, maybe I inspired someone to follow their dreams of being a doctor and they end up finding the cure for cancer, you know? So looking at it in that kind of way is definitely a lot. Yeah. That's the thing, is like, you do have to fight yourself and try to look at it both ways, because like you said, as like being that athlete too, going back to that, it's just like makes you really hard on yourself, because you really do. And when I feel like what makes it really hard is like, we really are like putting our all into this. Like, even when it is 50%, it's still my all. And that's what I like that you said too, like different seasons require like different effort and different work. So like, yeah, I'm at a point in my life right now, and I understand this, is like, sometimes I feel like I'm putting 50% into the brand, but that's because at this time, my other 50% is going into my 9 to 5. And at this time in my life, that's how it has to be, because that's what's making the money to pay for the bills, but that's making the money so that it can pay for me to have the time to do this as well. So like that 50% is still 100% of this season. So I really like how you broke that down. Hopefully the way I broke that down too, after you giving me the way to break it down, makes people understand that too. So like, it's kind of like a percentage thing, you know, like if I'm working right now, but like, it's just this point in my life, this is what I have to do. I have to give a 9 to 5, 30% of my time, the gym, 5% of my time, in the brand, 60% of my time. Then that's what I have to do, because that's the point in life I'm at. And that's where I'm supposed to be. You'll say that, you know, with faith, I believe in I don't know. This is the thing I say. I believe in a higher power, and I'm more on the spiritual side. So I believe in like energies and higher powers. And I believe that there's like a all-time higher power. I just don't ever, I'll call it God, but I don't know what it is. I'll say it's God. Like, I will say God, but I just believe in like the universe and stuff. Like, I believe what's meant to happen was meant to happen to me. And there's a reason being, and there's something telling me and speaking to me. Same thing like with meditating and stuff. Like, obviously it's something telling me that in my head, something's planning that in my head to think of that, you know, stuff like that. So I definitely still believe in like some sort of faith, you know, whatever.
For sure, man.
But
and I think that's definitely something to continue to explore. And like I said, I would never force anything on anyone, but I'm definitely going to shout from the rooftops my faith and what I believe, but never at the expense of stamping on someone's head to share that. I definitely think that there's a level of love that's at the root of that. Man, I was going to, oh yes. Circling back to what you mentioned there about putting in the effort in your 9 to 5, because that's where the money's coming to support the dream. I look at it like this too. And some people might think it's an unpopular opinion, but sometimes our calling isn't our career. And that's hard for a lot of people to come to grips with. Sometimes our calling is something we do out of the generosity of our heart. It's something that we do almost like it's not something we're going to get paid for. And that's okay because it's both and. Now, don't get me wrong. It's definitely something to shoot for. And that is definitely the goal. If that's
I have something to say on this, actually.
What's that?
I have something to say when you finish about this, actually, because I love it.
And some people don't catch that. And I love another theory or metaphor that I've learned through all the research and nonsense. I read too much and I watch too much content, but it's this idea of the sex versus cash theory. And a lot of people, it perks their ears. I just saw you post that. Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah, you probably saw me post it. And a lot of people, they're like, what do you mean sex versus cash theory? And it's that idea of sometimes in life we're going, honestly, we're all going to have these projects that are sexy to us. Like those things that really keep us up at night, the things that make us come alive. And there's going to be seasons where those projects aren't necessarily going to put food on the table. Those projects aren't going to keep the lights on. So you have to get creative in ways to make the cash projects. And it's understanding that those cash projects have their purpose, just as the sexy projects have their purpose. And knowing that you can have both. Now, it may look different. They may weigh in different percentages, like you mentioned earlier. And I think that also goes to not get too much into a tangent, but the same goes for how we view work and rest. Is I believe that they both work in tandem. And a lot of people shout from the rooftops about work-life balance or like harmony. And I believe that it's not necessarily a balance, but more of that rhythm that I mentioned earlier. And it's that idea of sometimes the season's going to look like running super hard, super fast for a short amount of time and then sitting and doing nothing for a short amount of time. And sometimes it's going to look like a slower pace. But ultimately, it's like understanding that this life is a journey and not a sprint. But yeah, I won't get too in the weeds there.
No problem, man. Anything. It is. Before I reach back to that, I'll say that's why I said like I do get put down, but like I had to click back in because like I said, like you were saying, your calling is not always going to be your career. I like that. Because like I said, like I've always felt like I just feel very like I just feel like a healer. My purpose is to help people. Like you said, that's what I've always felt. And I'm going to do this regardless whether it's bringing in money or not, because that's what I feel I need to do. And something to go off of that is like I've had a lot of people ask me like, how do I find my purpose now? No, for real. Like this is like some people may not believe this, but since I started doing this, I've had like a lot of friends talk to me about like not being able to find their purpose because I've spoken on purpose a lot on here. And like, I can't really, the best advice I can get is it really just like, once you find yourself, you're going to find your purpose. Like, so that's why like I started the brand, like the Authentic Vibes Only, because once you begin to find yourself, it just comes to you. Like you said, whether it's your faith in God and listening or listening to the universe, whatever you believe in, listening to that and freeing yourself of your own imprisonment of your mind, you're going to find it. And that could be, like he said, it may not make you money. For like a lot of women I've talked to about this, they feel their purpose is just to be a mother. Like just to have a kid. And I don't mean just to have a kid. That's a fucking amazing, like,
come on.
The fact that you can have a kid, incredible. Good for you. And don't just say that. Like, that's the thing is like, oh, I think mine's only to have a kid. Like that's an amazing thing. And if you feel that that's your purpose, that's probably your purpose. You know, like if you really feel that deep down inside you that like, I feel like being a mom is what I was made to do, then that's what you're made to do. And you're going to be the best mom ever. You know, that's how that is going to go. I've had people tell me like their purpose is just, show love, be in love, stuff like that. Like he said, it may not come with money. But that's the thing with that's just the thing with finding your purpose in life. That like I think it's more like when you find your purpose, money may come of it, but money isn't supposed to come from it. Like it's more of like once you've aligned yourself with who you're supposed to be and you find that purpose, just because you're kind of radiating that love and energy off you, money comes to you because you're just vibrating good energy and stuff like that. Like if that's what you believe, that's what you believe in. That's kind of the way I believe in it, is like you're just vibrating at a high energy and you're being your truest self and you found your purpose and you're putting that out into the world. Money just comes to you because it's a higher vibration than what you're at. It's just for real kind of luckily that it came to you, but it doesn't have to. Like you just got to start putting it out into the world and finding out what you're meant to do.
Yeah. And I like it. I've heard it said this way, that impact first, income follows. And a lot of people get that backwards, especially in this. The thing is, a lot of people want to be influential. A lot of people want to make an impact, and they want to do it in a level that brings fame and celebrity and popularity, and all those things are cool and all. But at the end of the day, I look at it like this. Your gifts and talents will get you into the room, but your character and integrity will keep you in the room. And a lot of people miss that. But to circle around what you were mentioning a little bit earlier is I think we're graced for every season. Now, mine leans towards my faith in God when I say grace, but I mean that like when we're in seasons, like you mentioned, like you talk about the stay-at-home mom. I mean, I'm still a stay-at-home dad that's building an online coaching business on the side. But I say for that first year with my son, I felt like I had direct orders of like, you're going to be fully present for this life that you're responsible for. And that is all I did. And we made it work. Like my wife has a great job. I mentioned it earlier. She continues to have a great job. And it's just like you're graced to handle what you're supposed to handle. And if it doesn't feel like it's working, and if it doesn't feel like it's peace, because that's a big thing too, is I believe that you follow peace and understanding. And when things are chaotic and confusing, I don't think that's, I feel like that's when you know that there's a pivot to be made. And we have to give ourselves that permission to pivot when things aren't working. And a lot of people don't catch that. But yeah.
Hey, Donnie talks about that a lot. He has like a saying about pivot. He always says like, pivot's my favorite word. You just always got to pivot.
Yep.
He says just a pivot. And I agree. Like you saying it and him saying it, it's like, yeah, you like everything in life is supposed to bring you, clarity and peace, happiness. It's not, if it's chaotic all the time, then there's something there's something there that shouldn't be there. It doesn't mean that everything in your life either. That's kind of where these like reevaluation comes. Like,
it also doesn't mean easy either.
Oh no, true. Definitely doesn't mean easy. Nah. It can be very hard. It could be the hardest decision.
Yeah, and I would take it a step further too. I like to kindly push back on the idea of happiness, because to me, I feel like happiness is just a feeling, and our feelings can lie to us sometimes. But joy is a choice. And when we can choose to be joyful and choose to be grateful and content in our current season, not complacent. Contentment means that you're satisfied enough to not complain. You're satisfied enough to be grateful that I woke up this morning. I have lights. I have this laptop that we're able to use internet and have this conversation. Complacency says I'm going to hit snooze 1,000 times. I'm just going to roll over and be below average. But I feel like when we are able to choose joy and contentment in our current season and gratitude, they're all kind of work together. But when we work in that space, that's when you may say the universe and the energy works. And don't I'm not making any light of that.
No,
So
no, for sure.
take offense to that. But I feel like that's when we begin to see doors open that are unexplainable. Like, I feel like that's when we live in the miraculous, because if we can choose joy and choose gratitude and choose contentment, that's when we wake up with that purpose and with that fulfillment. Because I know you've probably seen it, and you might even have those moments yourself now, because we all do, and we all have to realign. But it's that idea, you wake up and you're like, great, I'm going to have to get up early and go do this job that I hate. And then I'm going to get home and I'm going to watch a bunch of TV and eat junk food. And I'm not dogging on anybody if that's anybody listening. But I mean, like, when you start your day in a space of complaint and dissatisfaction and discontentment, then that carries over through the rest of the day. Now, if you were to start that same day, and yeah, it might have been a tough time to get up, but if you chose that little act of finding a few things to be grateful for, that little act of saying that no matter what happens, I'm going to choose to see the good in it, you'd be surprised how that can, man, shape a whole life.
It's so crazy. Like, I feel bad because, like, I feel like, I don't know. I think about this, like, stop, Red. Sorry, my dog's barking.
Your dog's name's Red. I love that.
Yeah. The dog's, yeah, that is my dog's name's Red.
I'm like, dang, bro, why are you yelling at me? What is
No, my dog's barking. But I feel like we talk about a lot of the similar things on here, and I try to niche down, you know, but like everyone, realistically, when I have guests, like, they're sharing their story and then, you know, similar things get discussed. The cool thing about it is, I think every time that something similar has been discussed, everyone has a different perspective and viewpoint on it. So there's always like new things to learn or new things to hear. And that's what, I don't know. I just love that. Like, I think about it sometimes, like I said, like, oh, we talked about similar things as another episode, but I'm like, yeah, but in all these episodes, when you're asking similar questions, like, how do you define authenticity? Who's your authentic self? It's going to start off probably like similar, but then once the conversation gets going and going, like I said, we're going to discuss so many different things, and our viewpoints are way different, not way different, but our viewpoints are different. Our perspectives are different. Everyone thinks differently. And that's what's so amazing about having all the guests on here. So I appreciate you bringing your perspective in. Even though, like I said, sometimes the guests might hear the first 2-3 minutes, be like, it's the same. But like, just listen in. Yeah. I promise you, like, everyone that I've had on and everyone I get to come across brings a cool perspective, a good perspective, a positive one that's going to be beneficial for you in your life. Because I say this too, all my guests bring beneficial things for me. Like, I take in like everything here. I get silent a lot. I tell my guests, because what you guys are telling me, like, it helps me. Like, it's still, I'm not open to learning, because like you said, I can learn new things every day. Like, I'm never going to be finished. And I appreciate your time and your perspective and helping me as well, and asking me questions and making me think more too. Because it just even though it's, you know, like, I like appreciate that a lot, because like, it is my podcast. So like, you probably feel like, oh, no, you don't feel like that because you said you didn't, but some people may get on and feel like, I'm just going to chill today. I'm the one being interviewed. But then you took the initiative to even ask me questions. I like that too. So thank you for that.
Yeah, like that. I've made that a segment of my podcast, is at some point I have my guests ask me if they have any questions for me. And I'll say it's definitely probably my favorite part of the show is when they get the chance to ask, because you know how it can get when you're you're the guy on the side with all the questions, and you're like, okay, how much should I interject? How much should I not? They usually will ask a similar question about my story. So it's like, it's always interesting being the guest, because it's like, okay, so how much of the story should I share? And it's like, how much should be said? But yeah, I'm curious, another question, if you don't mind me asking, because I love to ask this question when I have these types of conversations, because it helps us kind of circle back and reflect on what was said in a way that's applicable and practical to our lives. So I'm curious, what's been your biggest insight or takeaway from today's conversation?
I think the one that I like the most, dude, you hit a lot of good points there. I literally, every one of them I wanted to say stuff back to, but I think it'd have to be the one about like breaking down like the percentages and like the seasons. Cause for me, like you said, like I really do look at it as like, I've told my parents this, I told my friends this when they ask me, these are conversations that are hard with my parents, you know, cause I'm the GM of their restaurant, you know, like, so like, that's a lot of work, but I tell them all the time how I don't want to work here. Like, this is not what I want to do full time, and whether it's the podcast and the brand or not either, like that's what I want to do full time. But now you're giving me a different perspective. Like maybe that's not it. Maybe it's not. I would love it to be, but like I said, I'm going to do it regardless. And if it's not bringing in money, I'm going to have to find something else to do. Like you said, the sex or cash, like, yeah, like whatever brings in money, you know, sometimes it has to be something. But as of right now, I would say I'm looking at like content and complacency too.
Sure.
I'm definitely content with the season. But breaking it down, I think having those conversations, I tell them I don't want to work there. Where's I going with that? Now I'm talking too much, tangent too much. I forget what I'm going to say. But basically, I think, yeah, the biggest take was like breaking it down into seasons and kind of giving it more of like a retrospect and thinking like, I'm still giving this 100%. It's just like I'm not giving it 100% of my. I think the way it helps me break it down is like you said, but this is the way I'm gonna look at it too. Just because I'm not working on this full time, like 100%, doesn't mean I'm not giving it 100%.
For sure, exactly.
That's the way that's the biggest takeaway for me, because I feel like I've said that if I could give this 100% of my time, that it would be more successful, but that's not the season of life I'm in. So, and I do try to think of like, you really made me think of it more of like, am I being complacent? But like I said, I don't think I am, because I look at all the things I'm doing and I see how hard I work, and I feel like I would feel complacent if I wasn't making any strides. And just because, like I said, the strides aren't as big as I would like them to be, I feel like I am still making strides every day. So I think that's going to be my, am I complacent or content? Is it when like life, like you said, if I'm not making strides and stuff's kind of like looking a little like chaotic, maybe not exactly chaotic, but looking different for me, that's going to be like, there's something that needs to pivot. We need to change. I don't know if I got to, change my 9 to 5, move, whatever it is, but I just got to just reevaluate, which I say I do a lot, but now you're making me kind of reevaluate in a different way.
For sure, man. There's so many things I could add, but I'll save it for future conversations for sure. But I will say this much. You said you're 25, right?
Yeah.
25. I'm 30, so I got a couple years on you. I'll say something too that has been a big encouragement for me is fast isn't always better. And when we slow down, if we slow down, we speed up. And it sounds silly. Like, it's like, it's like, what do you mean by that? But I mean that one big thing that I've challenged myself with in life is to be present in the current moment, because it's so easy to be thinking about what's next, or to be in front of somebody in real life and be checking our phone. And there's a time and place for those things, sure. But one thing that I've tried to commit myself to, and it's a daily practice, and it goes back to meditation as a practical portion of that, is if you can definitely get into meditation for those listening and watching, that's one of the practical ways to be more present in the current moment. But it's just like we could be anywhere else right now, but we're here. And it's so easy to allow our minds to go somewhere else and be thinking, okay, so after this, I'm going to cook dinner for my family. You just start going through the laundry list of things. And that could be on the flip side as well. For those that have kids and girlfriend, spouse, wife, any of that stuff, is can you commit yourself to be present to the person that's in front of you? And that's just some things that I try to think of on myself. But yeah.
It's hard. I can add to that too. I think I'll add a little. I speak on being present a lot, and I think that's been one of the hardest things my entire life to do. Obviously, especially with anxiety and stuff. Like I'm just always in my head. But I think too, like I speak on being present. If I was more present myself, I know that a lot of these issues would, stray away. Type thing, like looking at, like you said, where I am, and then also even like really in the moment, like who am I with right now? Maybe I don't want to be at work, but we can still make the best of it types thing. You know what I mean? Don't look at it. It's always looking at it kind of like be present. And when you're present, look at it with a grateful and positive mindset, like you said.
For sure. So good.
All right, man. I won't take any more of your time. I want to say thank you again.
It's funny because it's always a fine balance to decide when to wrap up, because we could totally go for so much longer.
I can agree. Podcasts are so hard. Once you get going, like I've wanted to always, like, I always debate, like, what's a good time? I was like, when I'm by myself, maybe like a half hour to an hour. And then I never really want to go over like an hour 15 with my guests, but it always does. It's just, when you get talking about great things, it's just easy to continue on.
Yeah. And I mean, when people are committed to listening to it, they'll listen. Cause I mean, there's a few podcasts in particular I can think of offhand, and they've had 2-hour episodes. Like, obviously I'm listening to them in chunks or when I'm doing other things throughout the day. But yeah, it's definitely finding that. I always say it like this with my guests is I like to go till I'm full. It's easy to want to overeat sometimes, but if you can go till both you and your guest are full, then I think you've reached.
Man, you have a lot of like good analogies and sayings. I'm like writing them all down. Go till you're full. Like I'm even gonna write that down because like that feels right too. Like because like I think that's kind of like that's just how these work. Yeah, like I feel like that was just a perfect way to explain it to me. Like I kind of like, even if it has been an hour and 45 or whatever, once like it just feels like it. Like it's like I think this feels like so it feels like I'm full. Like I've had maybe it's like enough knowledge for the day I've given. I don't know, but I feel full
for sure.
So thanks again for that. Go to you.
I say it's my 10-year rap career that gives me all the one-liners. I don't know. I'll geek out on some one-liners, and man, I love them though. Because there's something about a good metaphor, a good story to really bring a point home. Because I feel like it's what connects us all at the end of the day.
I can agree. You got a ton of them, but I don't know. They'll have an impact on me. That's for sure. I'm going to reuse them just so you know too. So thanks.
For sure.
All right. Yeah. Thank you again for coming on, man. I'll be in touch. I'm sure.
Most definitely.
Wherever this relationship goes, I'm open to it. Anytime you need help, I don't know, like I don't always pay attention to like followers and stuff. I know pretty much every guest I have on here is bigger than me. That's all I know. So like, I really appreciate it for your time. No, I just appreciate, like, it's awesome that these people still say yeah, especially like you, anyone. But anyway, I can help you. If you need help, let me know. Just shoot me a message or anything you need. Just shoot me a message, man. I'm down. And also message me if, I don't know if you got like a PO box or in your size, and I'll send you a shirt from the upcoming drop, or if you'd like a hat, I'll send you a hat instead.
Dude, yeah, that'd be dope. Yeah, either one.
So just shoot me your address and stuff like that, and then the size for a shirt, or just say you want a shirt or a hat. If you click on my AVO podcast page, I should have my brands page tagged in it, and you'll be able to see like all the stuff coming up from the new drop.
Okay.
So just like screenshot the one you want and let me know, and I'll put you down for a size, and I'll send it out in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, man, that'd be dope.
All right. Thanks, man. You enjoy the rest of your night. Cook dinner, spend time with the family.
For sure, man. Yeah, likewise. And yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. And also, yeah, if you ever have any questions about anything, like, I mean, I don't have a huge following, but I do feel like I have a generally decent wealth of knowledge, especially in podcasting and stuff. So if you ever have any questions, you don't have to hesitate to send them over or ask me, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that for sure. If I have anything, a lot of everyone, like I said, has been on here. They know a lot more than I do. Like you said, you started in 2018, so you definitely have the knowledge.
For sure, man.
Have a good one, bro.
All right,
Thank you.
Yeah, you too. And we'll definitely be in touch.
Definitely, bro. For sure.
Free falling like I'm skydiving. Teacher and student, two worlds colliding. I love music, I don't abuse it. Take your crafts and you infuse them. Say you're normal, that's kinda weird. In deep thought, stroking my beard. Head of the table, saying my cheers. Ended up grateful for all the tears. Ready to grind for years. Been loving what's in the mirror. Ready to grind for years. Been loving what's in